It happened in 2017, when I was 14. My mom had just taken a new job in a rural town, and we moved into a rental house on the edge of a wooded area. The place was small but cozy, with creaky floors and an old brick chimney that hadn't been used in years. It had a weird charm, even if the wallpaper was peeling and some of the windows wouldn't open. The landlord was an older man who barely said a word. All he told us was to never use the attic. Just leave it shut and don't mess with it. That was it. My mom thought it was probably just filled with junk or damaged insulation, but something about the way he said it creeped me out. He didn't warn us. He instructed us. The first week was uneventful, but I never liked being alone in that house. I kept hearing faint knocks above my ceiling, especially at night. My mom said it was probably squirrels or raccoons. But these weren't random thumps, they were spaced apart. Deliberate. Like footsteps. One night, I stayed up late watching YouTube on my phone when I heard it again, 3 slow thuds directly above my bed. Then silence. I held my breath, frozen, staring up at the ceiling. I was about to brush it off when my phone suddenly lost connection. No Wi-Fi, no signal. It had never done that before. I decided to check the router, which was downstairs in the living room. As I crept through the hallway, I passed the pull-down attic stairs, the kind with the thin rope hanging from the ceiling. It was swinging slightly. Just gently swaying, like someone had tugged it a second ago. I stood there staring, heart pounding. Then I heard it. A breath. Not mine. Shallow, raspy, coming from above the ceiling tiles. I bolted downstairs, whispering for my mom. She was asleep on the couch with the TV still on. I shook her awake and told her what I heard. At first, she thought I was having a nightmare, until we both heard something fall upstairs. A dragging sound followed. She grabbed her phone and called the landlord, demanding to know what was in the attic. He was quiet for a long time, then simply said, "It's not mine." Before she could respond, the call dropped. We decided to open the attic together. I got a flashlight, and she pulled the rope. The stairs creaked open, revealing blackness above. I climbed halfway up and shined the light inside. The beam landed on a small pile of blankets, and something under them moved. Slowly. Deliberately. We didn't wait. We ran outside and drove to a neighbor's house to call the police. They searched the attic and found what they described as a makeshift nest. Blankets, food wrappers, water bottles, and a cell phone that wasn't ours. Someone had been living up there. Watching us. Listening. They never found who it was. The attic had an old ventilation access that led to the woods. He, or whatever it was, had slipped away. We moved out the next week. I still can't sleep in silence anymore. Because now I know, sometimes, the thuds in the attic aren't just the house settling. Sometimes, someone is living above you. My name's Caleb, and this happened last October when I was 19. I was working at a small locally owned electronics shop in a quiet strip mall. Business was always slow, and since I worked the closing shift, I was often alone for the last hour. It was a Tuesday, just after 8 p.m., when a man walked in. He looked completely normal, mid-30s, clean hoodie, jeans, glasses. But there was something about the way he moved. He didn't browse like most people. He walked in, stopped in the middle of the store, and just stared at me. I gave him the usual, "Hey, let me know if you need help," but he didn't say anything. Just smiled. A really slow, tight-lipped smile that never reached his eyes. I figured maybe he was just socially awkward, so I turned my attention back to cleaning the glass counters. A few minutes passed, and I realized he was still standing there. Not looking at the shelves. Just at me. Finally, I asked if he needed anything. He tilted his head and said, "What time do you close?" 9, I replied. He nodded once. Then, without another word, he walked slowly toward the back of the store, toward the staff-only door that leads to the stockroom. I called out, "Hey, you can't go back there," and started walking toward him. He turned around right before reaching the door and said, "I was just looking for the restroom." I told him it wasn't for public use and asked him to leave the back area. He apologized, but it felt rehearsed. Like he was pretending to be sorry, just barely holding back a smirk. Eventually, he wandered over to the phone accessories wall and pretended to browse, but I noticed he kept glancing at the door again. Something wasn't right. I pulled out my phone and texted my coworker who was supposed to come help me close but had called out sick earlier. I told him about the guy, just in case. At 8:50, the man finally approached the counter with a pack of charger cables. I rang him up, bagged the item, and handed it over. That's when he leaned in slightly and whispered, "I'll come back when you're alone." Then he winked. I stood there frozen. I managed to force a weak laugh, hoping it was a weird joke, but he didn't laugh. He just left. I locked the door immediately and called the strip mall's security. They promised to swing by, but by then the man had vanished. I stayed an extra 30 minutes, pretending to do closing duties, just to make sure he wasn't waiting nearby. When I finally made it to my car, I unlocked it fast, got in, and locked the doors. But as I started the engine, I caught something in my rearview mirror, someone slipping out from behind the dumpster, heading toward the building. Same hoodie. Same walk. I didn't stick around. I sped out of the lot and didn't stop until I got home. I reported it to my manager the next day and even filed a police report, but since nothing technically happened, there wasn't much they could do. For weeks after, I felt like I was being watched. I changed my schedule and started carrying pepper spray. I don't work there anymore, but I still remember that stare, and the way he said it, "I'll come back when you're alone." I just hope he never did. I grew up in a quiet coastal town in the southern Philippines. We didn't have malls or movie theaters, just rice fields, fishing boats, and endless jungle. As kids, we'd explore every inch of that place, even the areas our parents told us never to go near. One of those places was an abandoned house deep in the trees behind the old church. Everyone called it Bahay na Item, the Black House. The story went that it burned down decades ago and no one ever rebuilt it. Only the stone walls remained, charred and cracked. Some said it was cursed. Others said something lived in the ruins. When I was 11, I dared my cousin Eli to go there with me. It was just before dusk. We made our way through the overgrown path, stepping over vines and broken branches. When we finally saw the house, it looked even worse than I imagined. Blackened walls covered in moss, windows like hollow eyes staring out into nothing. But we were kids, more stupid than brave. We crept inside, giggling and daring each other to go farther. The air was thick, like it hadn't been breathed in years. That's when I noticed the smell, something rotten and wet, like dead fish mixed with smoke. Eli noticed it too. We looked at each other, suddenly uneasy. Then something moved upstairs. It was faint, like the sound of dragging feet across wood. We froze. The second sound was louder. A thump. Then another. It was coming down the stairs. We didn't wait to see what it was. We turned and bolted through the trees, but I was faster than Eli. When I looked back, he was gone. I screamed his name, heart pounding. For a moment, I thought he'd just tripped or taken a wrong turn. But then I heard his voice, faint, almost like a whisper. "Help me." I turned and saw him. Standing at the edge of the trees, staring at me. But something was wrong. His head was tilted too far to the side. His arms hung limp like he didn't know how to use them. And his smile, it was stretched wide, unnatural, too many teeth. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the village. Eli showed up 20 minutes later, scratched up and shaking. He said he had gotten lost, that something chased him, but he couldn't remember what. I didn't tell him what I saw. A week later, Eli started having nightmares. He'd wake up screaming that they were watching from the trees. He refused to sleep alone. One night, his mother found him sitting on the floor, whispering to something in the corner of the room. But there was nothing there. His family moved to Manila shortly after, hoping he'd get better. I never saw him again. But sometimes, when I pass by the church on my way home, I swear I see two shadowy figures standing at the edge of the forest, watching. And I never, ever walk that path alone.